Okay, so welcome to our podcast. Welcome to Let's Talk podcast. Um, we have our political segment, so we're busy discussing with shareholders and players in the electoral system. So I believe that you're one of those. So can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the founder. I'm 19 and I'm currently a law student at the University of Cape Town.
Okay, okay. So can you tell us what led to the formation of SoWeVote? What inspired you?
Well, the thing is, um, I've always been inclined to making a difference. And I think that politics is one of those things where you can make some of the biggest differences because of its overreaching capacity. And so when I was in matric for the first time, I just reached out to as many people could get involved. The year ended up not looking like what I needed it to look like, and I took a very tough decision to leave matric like very close to the end, just because I thought I wouldn't be able to give it my best. And like I don't know, maybe it's controversial to say, but many South Africans when they leave school, I find myself at Parliament, and yeah, I was interning, if you call it that, for a member of parliament and basically just following them around and helping them out with like, what they needed. And that was like my political baptism in a way. And from there, and no uh, discredit to the person that I was helping out, but I saw a lot in parliament that I didn't agree with. I saw that there was a system that was void of listening to each other in a way that I thought fostered good democratic participation. I saw a system that, was fueled by old ideas as well. And so, as I thought, it's about time that young people get involved in the system so that we can get it to look better. Because it's not just about new faces, it's about new ideas. To change the way things are now, you've got to have a new approach to it. This whole political culture's actually got to change
Yeah.
from the way that we think about our leaders to the way that we handle policy to the way that we as voters interpret information and the standard to which we, um, I know, hold people in public office. And it starts with yourself and then it grows out into changes in society, I think. And so for me, it was, what's the easiest way to get young people involved? Well, it's through action. And what's the best and biggest action that you can probably make at this time? It's to get registered and probably to give a vote in the election. And so we vote was born as a nighttime idea, actually. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, so that's a lovely story to hear. It screams active citizenship, and more especially for the young people.
Clarify, I did end up going back to school, and I do have like my matric and stuff. Like I didn't get my law degree through like qualifications or anything. I think I just
All
like
right.
yeah.
That's understood. That's understood. So, can you explain to our viewers what So We Vote is all about?
Well, the way I explain it is that SoWeVote is a non-profit organization that is not just looking to get registered voters, but active citizens. So what we try and do is we acknowledge that partly through the vote, we get people to be mobilized and also thinking about their space within the world. Because with the vote, it's not just about you. And we
Hmm.
live in a very individual world where it's like, it's all on you. It's up to you what you're going to make with your life. And, whatever happens to you is the result of yourself. We don't think that that's necessarily true. There's always going to be these systems at play, whether it's politics, whether it's other people, that influence the way that we live our lives. And so, pursuant to that, we're saying, in politics, you've got to get involved through your vote. And the only way that you can vote is if you know yourself. And so we aren't here to tell people who to vote for, but we are hopefully trying to help people understand what it is that they believe. And then from there, enable them to make their own decisions as to who it is that they are going to be voting for. And we do it in a way that I think is different to a lot of organizations, because we try and meet people where they are rather than expecting them to come to us. And we try and adapt for, all sorts of contingencies in terms of how do we get young people to engage with us? How do we get to hear their voice? When we speak to them, how do we make sure that it's heard as well? So what we do is we try and use the simplest, plainest language that we can find. We try and make it fun, which is not an easy thing to do in politics, I'm sure but
Yeah.
getting people to engage, you're going to meet them where they are. And so we've done away with the whole Instagram live conversation kind of thing about it, where it's like, if someone's not interested in politics, they're not going to want to dedicate enormous amounts of time to doing that. And so that's why we've done manifesto breakdowns in really simple language, because we understand that people are fed up with the system, and maybe rightfully so. We're saying things have to change, but that change starts with us. And so to make it easier, to get people who aren't normally involved to be involved, we're trying to bring it to them, trying to make it easy for them to understand what will happen if they vote for this person. What are some of the ideas that they've got in mind, and at the same time, give them enough space so that they can look at themselves and ask the question, do I believe that? Is this what I think the world should look like? Because you're one, it's not the thing that switches the election, right? When you do it together, that's when we make change. And so, it's really important to us that people realize that as much as it is about learning about yourself, it's about finding yourself in society and building the community and doing it together.
Well,
Sorry, I know that was a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. That's a mouthful to process. So you mentioned that you're trying to make politics interesting, more especially for the young people. So what do you think is the main reason for youth voter apathy? According to the research that you've made, according to the data that you have gathered from the leaders that you have met and from the people you have met on the ground. So what are the main leading causes for youth apathy?
Well, the thing is, people are fed up with the system. And I mean, if you look around, it comes against a backdrop of, decades of a political culture that we've maybe knowing or unknowingly been cultivating. We've been speaking for so long about the fact that, you've got to vote for the big parties or it's a lost vote. Or, doesn't matter who you vote for, the governing party is going to win anyway, so you might as well not get. We came out of apartheid 30 years ago, formally, when we elected our first democratic government, right? And a lot of people saw that as the finish line. But in reality, it wasn't. It was just the next step that we had to start taking. And from there, I think along the way, older people, perhaps they got tired. I don't know what the reason is, but I mean, a lot of the people that were in government or are in government still, they were there back in I don't know, 1900 and something. Maybe they're tired. That's okay. It's fine to say you're tired. There's need for change. Just because we got to the point where something was better doesn't mean that it can't be built on. And I think, we continuously be building on it. And the fact that we got to a situation where things kind of stagnated and certain people were saying, oh no, but it wasn't as bad as it was, And we have a political culture where the only rebuttal is, we are not them. It's not constructive. We're not speaking anymore about ideas. We're not speaking about goals. We're not speaking about what drives us forward. We're speaking about criticizing the way things are without thinking about it holistically. And so when I think about voter apathy, I'm not surprised, And at the same time, I understand those people, because what's happened now is that a lot of people feel that the system just doesn't work. They look around and they see change doesn't happen as quickly as possible, and they lose hope because they don't feel like it can happen. I think that's because we've divorced the idea from ourselves. And also within the system itself, it's not easy to get involved. It's not easy. People don't know who they are. So, the whole idea of government becomes such a faraway thing where it's like, I'm not thinking about, oh, I can chat to my, ward councillor about this issue. I can speak to, this person about that. It's all about feeling like you're isolated. And that's valid when you have a system that isolates you as it is. And so, when it comes to voter apathy, what we're trying to do at SoWeVote is to say, we recognize those feelings. We recognize that when you look down and you see the way things are and you don't feel like things can change, that we get that there's a sense of hopelessness. But it's then our, approach that we've got that's saying hopelessness isn't what brought us here. This democracy wasn't brought about because people were complacent in how things were, or they were criticizing how things were only. It's about criticizing, identifying the situation and the problems that need fixing, and then action and hope that things can get better. So, yeah, in terms of voter apathy, I think the biggest problems are things like conspiracy theories and misinformation, and also government and the systems of government and the whole political culture itself just not catering to people on the level that I think they need.
So do you believe that hopelessness is just reason enough to not to go vote?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that
I'm just wanting your understanding on the issue.
hopelessness to make people feel they can't make change.
Mhm.
I think I'm saying the exact opposite. If back to 1986, and when SoWeVote was named, we kept in mind
Uh, the internet is breaking down.
That's why we started one word, because it's supposed to make you think about the data uprising. If you think about what that was, a lot of historians call it the turning point in apartheid, right? Young people, they stood up for what they believed for, they went out there, they protested. Some of them even gave their lives for what they believed, right? People call it the turning point of apartheid because that's when the world started really looking at South Africa. That's when things started changing. That's when pressure came on government. That's when 5 years later, apartheid started being broken down. And then 3 years after that, Mandela became the first president of a democratic South Africa. When we look at that story, I take away two things. Firstly, young people are change makers. When they speak up, the world listens.
Yeah.
Right? Secondly, change doesn't happen overnight. When the Soweto things happened, it was awful. People died, and it pulled response. But at the same time, change didn't come the next day, or even the next week, or the next year. Mandela was released 5 years later. The new government was formed 8 years later. Change is going to take time. So when we speak about this election being our 1994, whatever, I think, the fact that the 2 years end in four make for a good rhyming situation. But whether that's factually true, I don't actually know. I think that if this year can't be our 1994, I think that this year is definitely going to be our 1985. Because what I am seeing is I'm seeing a lot of young people getting involved. I'm seeing a lot of young people think about politics. I'm seeing a lot of young people look at themselves and looking at the world and saying, this isn't how it should be.
Yeah.
We deserve something better.
Mm.
Oh, let's make some change. Learn about this. People are thinking about government and the way government should be acting. So, when it comes down to it, it's not hopelessness. That's an excuse. But it's about recognizing that it's valid so that we can help those people to engage. It's saying, because, okay, wait, I'll give you an example. Right?
Yeah.
So we engage with people, and often I'll ask them something. This was back when we could still like get registered to vote. I was asking people stuff like, are you registered? Yeah, whatever. And then they were like, no, I'm not really into politics. And then I sat there and I went, okay, tell me what that you do care about. They're like, no, I believe in democracy. I don't whatever. Like the whole thing is just whatever. I'm like, okay, we don't need to fight about that.
Yeah.
Let's rather have a conversation about what it is that you are interested in. And then they'll say something like, oh, well, I care about education. I care about people with disabilities, like how they're treated in society. And often at times it comes with a personal story. Or the reason why they don't believe in politics comes with a personal story. They've got something to say about how government doesn't look after the area that they live in. Or the fact that, their parents run into debt with medical aid every year because, healthcare isn't affordable and they can't afford a private option or all sorts of things like this. And at the end of the conversation, I used to manage to get them registered to vote because it would become clear that wholesale change like that go to the heart of our homes, they go to the heart of our cities, that have to do with big entities and players like companies and the healthcare system and whatever. It all has to do with the government. We as citizens, the vote is not the be all in all silver bullet kind of thing, right? But it is a really helpful tool. And it's also something that people historically have died to give to us. And so it's about realizing that hopefulness paired with the willingness to make the change, that's what's going to drive us forward. And the vote is just a tool to do that.
Okay. So you mentioned the accessibility of information to the voters and government institutions. So do you think that the IEC is doing a good enough job to promote the elections, or do you also involve the political parties in voter education?
So, okay, maybe I need to understand the question a bit. What do you mean, like the political parties?
So do the political parties have the obligation to go out and educate the people? Okay, this is how you vote. This is how you're supposed to vote. These are the intentions of voting. Such stuff.
I don't think that they need to be divorced necessarily from the fact that the IAC's job is to make sure that we have free and fair elections. Right? Yeah, I mean, you can speak about whether they have an obligation to make sure that we have an informed vote or informed about voting. Maybe that's a discussion that I don't know. Maybe I can't speak on stuff like that.
All right.
When it comes to political parties, definitely with political parties, I think that they've got an obligation. Why? Because they're the ones courting your vote, right? So for the IC, I don't think that they should necessarily, no, we'll not say it like that. They should. The IC should be making it easier for users of voting and the importance of the elections. But I don't think the IC is there to tell you, what this party stands for or how these things work or the intricacies of politics. I think that political parties, they've got more of an obligation to do that because they're the ones supporting your vote. You shouldn't have to be the one running off and doing the research and trying to find out and whatever. That's good. You should be doing the research and you should be, trying to find out more. It shouldn't have to be all on you. You shouldn't have to be the one to say, oh, I wonder what the ANC has to say about medical coverage for people or whatever. They need to come. We recognize that healthcare is an important thing in this country. Here's what we're going to do in order to make it better. Here's what we're going to do to make it more accessible. And, I'm sorry to say, but political parties haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
Often in the manifestos, what they do is about stuff that we all agree on because they're trying to be non-offensive. They'll say stuff like, oh, we're going to end load shedding, we're going to stop crime, we give jobs. It's like, okay, everyone in this country wants load shedding to end. Everyone wants crime to stop. Everyone wants jobs. The question is about how. They should be coming to us, convincing us of the ideas that they have in terms of its actionables. What is it that's going to change? It'll be different if you're going to be in the government. And that's something that should be common knowledge in a way where it's like they need to do a lot more in terms of reaching people, speaking to people, maybe even getting those people to come aboard and help them draft those positions and policies and whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, it affects those people. And so when they are looking for your vote, we're telling young people you shouldn't have to be running after them. And so I suppose in the intermediate phase of that, you get us that's trying to say, okay, here's what they're actually trying to do, here to do kind of thing. So that we get rid of people voting for parties just because they say, oh, we're gonna end corruption, we're gonna bring jobs, we're gonna whatever. It's about how. What's it gonna mean for you? What's that gonna look like?
Yeah, so I think you've answered the question. So, like, a secondary question to that would be, do we think that we should include politics in some sense in high schools, maybe, so that
Yeah.
we have an educated.
Of course. So I think that leaving when someone turns 18 is like probably one of the biggest mistakes that we can make in this country, because that's throwing you in the deep end. I mean, it's yeah. They don't speak about politics or how things are real. Maybe they do. Maybe they do it indirectly, but they don't speak about how it relates to you as a citizen until the day before you walk into the voting booth. You can't make an informed decision like that. It's about when you're in high school, and I agree it should be in high school because that's when you start engaging with the world a bit, deeper than you were maybe before. A lot of people, and they put it's to shape their politics. And so when we're speaking, for instance, like in the life orientation curriculum about things like drugs and things like sex and things like jobs and whatever, it's important that these things come to the forefront, that we're educating people the different routes and alternatives, the different ways that people think about these kinds of things, because it gives them the opportunity to look at the different solutions and say, I'd want something like that, or I'd think, this solution might work, or, this kind of ideology speaks to me, or, I'd like to get involved in this way. Because when you're doing that, you're getting your mind active about the issues. And so if you're doing that at 16 or 17 already, or maybe even earlier, the slower you do it, the more time you give yourself so that your opinions and your views can evolve. Your politics is pretty much just a part of you as your personality, and it's going to evolve over time. The more you learn about things, the more your views change, or maybe they'll even stay the same, but you'll become more informed. And as you head towards the polls when you turn 18, you know that you can actually make an informed decision, one that's based on what you believe, one that's based on the values that you hold dear, and not just, I don't know, something that you think you're expected to do, or you're choosing between the list of two evils or a t-shirt or something, and now you decide you recognize the logo. But, making a choice that you actually think is representative of you.
Yeah. So let's take a step back and go back to, is the political parties doing enough to promote voting and all of that? So what could be one of the solutions to the lack of political education in the country?
That's a tough one. I think that this is going to have to be structural and like a social change. You've got to undo a lot of things, and that means you have to acknowledge how things are. So in a similar way that we've been able to say, there's a problem with people believing in conspiracy theories and whatever. The only way you can undo that is not to shout at them and say, oh, you're so uneducated and whatever. It's to go to them and say, I hear your point. I hear why you say you feel like that. Let's look at the real reasons. Let's work through it. And so I think that, from a structural level, you can have within schools. a little bit more to do with the curriculum. You can have civic education within your life orientation curriculum, for example. It can maybe doesn't have to be overt. You know, they speak about politics and stuff that's related to politics at school all the time. It's not going to be there for you. So, your teachers are telling you this party does this, and so don't vote for them. It's about saying, when we look at things like healthcare, here is some of the solutions. Here's some of the obstacles. Here's some of whatever. This is how changes in the healthcare system actually end up affecting you in real life. That sort of thing. Socially, I'd say, political parties need to make themselves more accessible in terms of the language that they use, in terms of the imagery that they use, in terms of how they speak to the different demographics. And they need to be doing more to get young people on their side. But it also makes sense why they don't. So maybe, and when I say that, it's not to give them an excuse. It's to say that,
maybe you can explain that.
Okay. Maybe I will. So, with the way I see it, right, a lot of older people that are already voting for them, that's their voter base. Older people have kind of things are and vote a certain way because they know what they believe already, right? They've been on this a lot longer than you and I have been. And so, when it comes to the economy and education, whatever, they've kind of got informed opinions when it comes to things like that about what they like to see. And so when their vote comes in, they know who they're voting for. For young people, I think that because we have a newer outlook and we want to see things change and whatever, it makes a difficult situation for political parties because it means that they've got to act, And so it's easy to overlook young people because it's like, they don't vote anyway. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Or, here's a long-term solution that's going to make the country, a bit upset for now, but in the long term is going to be good for society. But we can ignore that because, our voters don't want that anyway. Young people do. So the longer young people stay out of the equation, the longer politicians can overlook you and stuff. But that's not a concern. Or maybe it's a concern, but we're not going to do anything about it right now. I mean, let's take climate change, for example. With the average age of a voter being 50 years old, right? They're thinking about retiring within the next 10, 15 years. Meanwhile, young people are thinking about moving into the job sector in 10 to 15 years. When it comes to the vote, for climate change, maybe you need something like higher green taxes. Maybe you need something like getting rid of, fossil fuel industries and things like that. Those are not countable things. Those are not things that people that are about to retire want to hear about. Because it means that they are going to have to, they may be retiring or maybe they'll be out of a job and whatever, depending on how a politician, alleges they're going to make things better in that way. For younger people, we see the benefit in saying it's worth doing this now and causing the discomfort to have a plan in 20 years' time, kind of thing. And so it shows the differences. Even when it comes to the economy, maybe there's something that will be good for the economy long term, but something that will help now in the next 5 years. So politicians think, okay, let's do this so that we can make our voters happy. They want to see this happen now. But then, we don't see how it affects things going down the line. Because young people, we're going to be coming into our full adult lives, not anytime, well, maybe sometime soon, but we've still got a whole life ahead of us. Meanwhile, people at the end of their life, it makes sense why they're not really looking to shake up the whole system to their disadvantage right now. But we're saying, if young people in this country, 18 to 30, make up 1 in 3 of the population, we shouldn't be making up 1 in 14 of every voter. We should be there. We should be the majority because together we actually form enough in terms of numbers to say that we can decide who's going to win an election, who's going to speak to us. And when you have a force like that, a politician has to listen and they have to cater to you at their job.
Okay, so yeah, I've heard that. So can you just briefly, very briefly, we're running out of time. Tell us what are some of the things that you as the So We Vote organization have done to interest the youth to vote? So I know what you've done, but for our viewers who do not know what you've done, can you just highlight quickly a few of those things?
I recognize the saying quickly because I realize I'm like talking like quite a bit. But yeah, so what we've done is we've tried to make it a bit fun. So what we do is we make sure that when we publish, we don't take it too seriously, but at the same time, make sure that all the information come across. We try and post a lot of memes and use TikTok and Instagram and stuff to reach people where they are. We are currently building a curriculum that we can then take to schools so that it can run as like a off school or maybe even in school activity kind of thing for a mural where people can learn about like civic education and also like come together and learn about the vote and like encourage each other to do it. We also make sure that we publish manifestos and things about policy so that people can understand what's going on in the country and not feel like they're too uneducated to get involved. You're never going to know everything. So it's never an excuse to stay away from politics. So we're just trying to get more people to get involved through making them. And when we do that, we speak to the parties directly. We speak to the people in government. We speak to all the interested stakeholders and NPOs and things like that. And we make sure that we ask critical questions about how and why, so that we're not just speaking in the abstract about, these high, lofty ideals that everyone wants. So yeah, that's what SoWeVote does.
Yeah, I must say that it's lovely work that you're doing. It's really inspirational and very educative, by the way. So we're gonna give you some time to shine. We're gonna give you 2 minutes to just sell yourself, final remarks, words of encouragement, anything that you want to say.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've spoken about everything that we've wanted to do as an organization, but I will say this, you know, young people, we've got the time, we've got the power, numbers on our side. This country is still something that we can be proud of, but only if we do it together. Young people, we know that in this country we deserve better. And, so we vote. I'd encourage people to, go check out our Instagram, get involved, get active in your community. It's not going to stop with this election. It's not going to stop with the next election. This is about an ongoing process about cultivating your own views, cultivating your own opinions, making sure that you within your community are moving forward in a way that is constructive for this country, because, someone's going to change it, and I think it's going to be us. So yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time and for sharing with us the most important information on the elections. I think this is the end of our episode, and yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'll now stop the recording.